Sunday is the best day. Sunday is the best day. 'Cause it's Sunday fun day. Football's gonna be back soon. Football's gonna be back soon. All right. Thank you, Rockfin. Let's come on, Rumble. You are ready too. Let's go ahead and go.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Sunday, guys. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, which is today. Sunday is the best day, I think, right? Sunday's a more chill day. Everybody's kind of relaxed. We're about to get back into football season. People are going to be making their little football appetizers and all that jazz. So I feel like Sunday is kind of the best day until tomorrow. And you got to go back to work for a lot of us. But welcome and shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. We do have some interesting stories today. Quick, big shout out to Detainee Haiphong. He actually testified at the UN. If you guys did not see that, you're going to see that today. So we're going to go ahead and get into that as one of the stories as well. But I'm always excited when someone from left independent media testifies in front of the UN, because I feel like they don't get the opportunity to hear our voices as much as they should. So big whoop whoop for that one. I'm going to go ahead and get started with shout outs in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and dive right in. Let's start at the top. Shout out to David, says the WHO won't get fooled again. All right, David. Greetings, Cheryl says, when are you going to be a guest on the Jimmy Dore show, Sabby? I've been on Jimmy's show a couple of times. I think the last time I was on his show, I think Aaron, I think the last time I was on there, Aaron was hosting, and Bree was actually on that night too. That was a really big show, actually. That was a big night. There was a lot of people that came on that night. But yeah, I've been on Jimmy's show a couple of times. Shout out to Hannah, says, cooking dinner while I tune in. Interesting. I did not cook today, Hannah. I know. Dun, dun, dun. Sorry. Shout out to Danny in the chat, says, thanks for covering my briefing, Sabby. You are welcome, Danny. Greetings, ACAB, says, hello, everyone. Shout out to Lawrence, who's a Sabby member, says, hi, Detainee Haiphong, looking forward to it. Greetings, Trauma Queen says, love you, Sabby. Love you too, Trauma Queen. Shout out to Ann, says, good afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Yes, it is. It's really nice outside today. I'm just glad we get a break from rain. It's been a really rainy summer. So if we have a day of just sunshine and like no rain, I'm good. I am good. Greetings, Lorez says, yo, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Happy Sunday, y'all. Smash the like. The smears just make people want to vote for West more, like they did to Trump in 2016. Rome's movie was censored yesterday, ? YouTube bastards. So I don't think so. If I remember correctly, I think Rome was trying to upload it as a premiere, but it never got to that 100%. So that could have had something to do with the internet connection, because I know Rome, he was at the screening of the documentary. I don't know if you guys know, but Rome does have a documentary. It was made by Right Brain Studios. And so he was at an award ceremony because they're giving out awards to documentaries. This was down in Tennessee. And I think what may have happened is that if the connection wasn't strong enough, the internet connection, it'll just keep spinning in YouTube Studio. And it's one of those things, like, it's hard to upload, from my experience, it's hard to upload clips on the go. Like, I usually upload those things at home. If I'm going on the road, I do it at home first, and then I head out, because I've tried to do it before in the past and it'll just keep spinning. So yeah, it wasn't censored. It just didn't complete the processing portion. Shout out to Gamer says hello. Greetings, Ben, who's a Sabby member, says it's a smoky day over here in Western Washington State near Seattle. Ooh, is that because of the fires from Canada? Shout out to Red, says Sabby on Sunday. Let's get it. Let's do it, Red. Greetings, A2Z Me, says nice voice. Thank you. Shout out to Eric, who's a Sabby member, says big hellos to all Sunday friends. Greetings, Anthony sends a smile. Shout out to Rick, says, hey, y'all. What's going on, the quantum alchemist? Every time a CIA operative is unalived and executed in China, my day gets a little bit better. My smile a little bit wider, the sun a little more bright, and it feels like all is right in the world. Well, quantum alchemist. Interesting. Shout out to Eric, says, what's up from getting soaked, Southern California? Yeah, this is wild, right? Like, there's a hurricane in Southern California, or tropical storm. I think it's Tropical Storm Hillary Clinton. I don't know. When I heard they named it Hillary, I was like, interesting. Greetings, Nikki's World, says hello, everyone. Shout out to New Sheep, says bye. Greetings, Robert, says Sabby, your take I find interesting. Thank you so much, Robert. Greetings, Dayman. Sunday suck. I'm always in a rush to finish errands until hell restarts on Monday. Yeah, I guess I can see that too. Actually, I did laundry yesterday, so I wouldn't have to worry about it today. Shout out to Notori, says friends and family and I are going to watch you, Sab, and then we're going to eat for my birthday. Let's give Notori a big shout out and happy birthday. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. I'm not going to ask you your age, but happy birthday, Notori. Thank you so much. Greetings, Negras, says Sunday has the highest rate of suicide. Well, thank you for that, Negras. Oh, thank you for letting us know that. Greetings, Bill, says nice. I wonder who invited Danny to speak. I'm curious about that too. Shout out to Ravina, who's a Sabby member, says happy birthday to Notori. Greetings, Lynn, says bravo, Danny. Shout out to Miss Mississippi, says hello, Sabby. What's going on? Desert Mantis says, oh no, I'm late. You're right on time. Right on time. Shout out to Lana, says tropical storming here. Whoosh, man. Shout out to Kaiwan. Yeah, I think he's going to, and that's at the other lady. I watch bikes, so I didn't. I don't want to make it seem like. Okay, I'm not sure about that, but welcome. Greetings, Foolish Coyote, says hello, Sabby. Good life to you. Good life to you too. All right, and let's go ahead, and I think I missed Charlie. Shout out to Charlie, who's a Sabby member, says was a good documentary. Glad they had a great time at the event. That's right. There's pictures on Twitter. If you guys follow Rome on Twitter, his Twitter handle is @unholy. If you follow him, you'll see pictures from the event. So yeah, I don't know if he won, if they won or not yet. I don't want to bother him because I know he's busy down there in Nashville, but I was happy for Rome. And thank you for the super chat, Black Thoughts. Black still supporting Dems is insanity. You don't have to tell me, Black Thoughts. You do not have to tell me. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. I want to give a quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. You guys are the business. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate, Sabinators, there's Sabsters, there's also Sabbies, and of course, members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a special shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it out to Raymond Lee. And this one actually isn't new, but Staccato, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I forgot to put your name up here. I don't know what happened. But I want to make sure I give a shout out to Staccato David for also being a Sabby patron as well. Thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate all of your support. All righty. Let's go ahead and get into it, guys. Let's go ahead and share that beautiful thumbnail so we can see what we're going to discuss today. And I do have an update on a news story that I covered a couple of days ago that I think you might be interested in as well. Tonight, we are discussing Donald Trump, no debate. What is this about, and what does this have to do with Tucker Carlson? I think this week should be really interesting for those of you who are watching the GOP primary. It'll be interesting to see how this goes. I'll just wait to get into that story. We're also going to discuss Dr. Cornell West is smeared again. Yes, again, different outlet. We'll get into it. And there's something that I want to show you in reference to Dr. West that I feel mainstream media is not talking about, but I feel this is why they're actually afraid. So wait for that. We're also going to discuss Danny Haiphong testifies at the UN. There you are, Danny. And we're also going to discuss, if you have not heard this story, you will be hearing it here, maybe first, actually. I don't know if anyone else went live today to discuss it, but they may have. If not, you heard it here first. And that is Palestinian detainee branded. So I want to make sure we talk about this story and the struggle that people are dealing with in reference to the conflict between Israel and Palestine. That's an important story. I think that needs to get out. But first and foremost, I do have an update in reference to the Michael Oher conservatorship story that I covered a couple of days ago. At that point in time, I told you that I believe that obviously he has the proof that there was a conservatorship. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to have a lawsuit. So I was correct about that. And since that lawsuit was announced, it appears now that the Tuohy family has decided to end their conservatorship of Michael Oher. Let me show you this. This is a huge update. Tuohy family plans to end conservatorship of Michael Oher after The Blind Side star files for lawsuit. So this was huge. This just came through. Go down here. Sean and Lee Ann Tuohy plan to end their conservatorship of former NFL offensive lineman and Ole Miss All-American Michael Oher. Attorneys representing the couple announced on Wednesday. Oher, whose story is depicted in the 2009 film The Blind Side, alleged the Tuohy family never legally adopted him as portrayed in the film and only entered a conservatorship in an attempt to profit off of him. Though attorneys contend Oher received the same share of profits from the film as other members of the Tuohy household. Oher's lawsuit, which was obtained by ESPN, claims the Tuohys entered Oher into a conservatorship while presenting it to be the same process as legal adoption. The lawsuit demanded an end to the Tuohy's conservatorship of Oher, which has been in place since 2004, just months before his 18th birthday. So just to remind everyone, when he signed these documents, he was technically still a minor. And it was very clear to me when I covered this story a couple of days ago that Michael Oher did not realize what he was signing. So that is that. Entering Oher into a conservatorship allowed the Tuohys to oversee Oher's financial life and enter into legal deals without his consent, though Oher was not a legal member of the family. So even when we talk about the movie The Blind Side, typically if someone is portraying your name, your image, or likeness, most of the time, you would have some say so. You would either be on the set of the film, you would have been contacted, something like that. But that did not happen in the case of Michael Oher. And honestly, the studios didn't have to do that because, again, the Tuohys had the conservatorship. So if they wanted to say, yes, let's make a movie about him being the blind side, that was his position when he played football, we could go ahead and do that. And they didn't even have to ask Michael if he wanted that to happen. So just an FYI. Where are we here? Where did I stop? Oh, in the case of The Blind Side, the award-winning film grossed more than $300 million and earned actress Sandra Bullock an Oscar for her portrayal of Leigh Ann Tuohy. Michael Oher discovered this lie to his chagrin and embarrassment in February of 2023 when he learned that the conservatorship to which he consented on the basis that doing so would make him a member of the Tuohy family, in fact, provided him no familial relationship with the Tuohys. So that was another thing I just want to remind you of, especially if you didn't see that story. He actually didn't find out till this year that what he signed was a conservatorship. It was not, he basically signed over whatever rights he kind of had to his name and his image to them. So legally, they were able to use his name and image. If they want to make money off of it, legally, they could do that. In the wake of the lawsuit, the Tuohys and their legal team called accusations against the family hurtful and absurd. Attorneys for the family said Wednesday the $500,000 in proceeds from the film was split evenly among all 5 Tuohy family members or included at least $100,000 per person. Now, that's different from what the previous article said. The previous article said the Tuohy family received over $200,000 per person and that Michael Oher did not receive anything from the film when it came to profits. In reality, the Tuohys opened their home to Mr. Oher, offered him structure, support, and most of all, unconditional love, says Martin Singer, who's the attorney representing the Tuohys. They have consistently treated him like a son and one of their 3 children. His response was to threaten them, including saying that he would plant a negative story about them in the press unless they paid him $15 million. So I would say if he was like one of their own children, do they have conservatorships over their children? And don't tell me it can't be done because Britney Spears' father had a conservatorship over her. Just something to think about. They insisted that any money received be divided equally, and they have made good on that pledge. The evidence documented in profit participation checks and studio accounting statements is clear. Over the years, the Tuohys have given Mr. Oher an equal cut of every penny received from The Blind Side. Even recently, when Mr. Oher started to threaten them about what he would do unless they paid him an 8-figure windfall, and as part of that shakedown effort, refused to cash the small profit checks from the Tuohys, they still deposited Mr. Oher's equal share into a trust they set up for his son. Well, that's a different story, isn't it? That's why I wanted to give you an update on this story, because this is very different than what was reported a couple of days ago. So we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. Hopefully they'll be able to settle everything. And your family is important, I think. And don't get me wrong, like sometimes there are times when you do have to part with family. It happens. But I sincerely hope that they figure this out and can move forward. Apologies need to be made, whether you feel you're sorry or not. Sometimes it's just best to just go ahead and apologize and just keep it moving. But we shall see. We shall see. Okay. Did the chat crash, gamer? It's moving on my end. YouTube has been having problems with that recently, where the live chat has been crashing, not even just on my show, but other shows too. Like, it's really weird. Some technical glitches that they're having. Ravina says, that's not family. Unconditional love is unconditional. This wasn't it. Here you go. Bill says it crashed for a bit. Okay. All right, cool. Looks like it's back in action now. All right, great. Okay, let's dive into the other stories that I have scheduled for today. So I want to start off with this story coming out of Israel. I actually saw this on Twitter. It was Max Blumenthal who shared this article. And the first thing I just thought to myself was, where is Hakeem Jeffries? Where is Richie Torres? Where is RFK Jr.? Where is Rabbi Shmuley? Like, where are all these people that continue to defend the Israeli government when it comes to a story like this? Because this type of abuse and retaliation, like, this is not okay to treat people this way. So what happened? Let's get into it. By the way, if you try to find this on YouTube, because I looked on YouTube to see if there was a video of the story. I have yet to find a video of it yet. But here we are. Israeli police arrest and brand Palestinian with Star of David. Let's get into this. You can see the pictures here. This is just like living in a state of terror. Like, would you want to live like this, guys? Could you imagine if you walked outside your apartment or your home and this is what you see every day when you're just trying to go to school, go to work, go to the gas station? It says a Palestinian man who was detained by Israeli forces in occupied East Jerusalem said he has been physically abused after officers brutally beat him and branded the Star of David on his cheek, according to Israeli media reports. The man's lawyer presented the charges to a Jerusalem district court on Thursday, a day after he was taken from his residence in the Shafat refugee camp. At least 16 officers were involved in the arrest of the Palestinian man. However, none had their body cameras on, according to Ynet News website. So here we go with another situation where the body cameras are off. What does that remind you of? Now, this happened in Israel, but we see this same issue happen in the United States. Now, why do I want to make that connection? Because who trains the police officers in the United States? Where do they get their training from? They get their training from Israeli forces. So you see the connection. This is why I try to tell you that foreign policy is domestic policy. What you see happening right now, that's happening in Israel in reference to the police officers and the brutality, that's the same thing that happens here in the United States. Let's continue. The officers blindfolded the man and proceeded to beat him with their fists in all parts of his body. The man's cheek was then branded with the Jewish Star of David symbol, it added. Wadim Shub, the Palestinian man's lawyer, was quoted as saying in a statement that the incident was a grave case of intentional violence and humiliation of a detainee by police, and demanded an immediate police investigation. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen like branding before. Some fraternities used to do this. I don't know if they still do this till this day, but that's considered hazing. But some fraternities and some of the rugby players, they used to do like a branding exercise where they will literally take like a symbol that's shaped into a piece of metal, basically take that metal and dip it into hot fire and press it on your skin. And thus the symbol is now branded into your skin. It's painful. And I don't know how you remove it. So if anyone asks me, like, how do you remove it? I don't know how you remove it. Let's go on. As a law-abiding country, we must not put up with the phenomenon of police brutality. You see that right there? Police brutality. In this case, the nature of the injuries raises a strong suspicion that they were racially motivated. The presiding judge, Amir Shakid, reportedly expressed his horror over the incident. The Times of Israel reported and directed the case to the police internal investigation department. Man. It's crazy over there. The police department alleged that the man resisted arrest, violently attacking and kicking police who responded with reasonable force to subdue him. The man, whoops, go down. Sorry about that. The man resisted arrest. Isn't that the same thing that police officers in the US say? Whenever they're accused of police brutality, they say that the suspect was resisting arrest. Anything can be considered resisting arrest, by the way. The suspect did not comply. Stop resisting. This is what you'll see on these videos that people get with their phones when the police officers turn their cameras off. Stop resisting, stop resisting. And you'll see in the video that they're actually not resisting. There's been times when the suspect has been on the ground with their hands behind their back and the police officers are still saying, stop resisting. Let me continue. The Palestinian man was detained for allegedly committing drug trafficking offenses. Al Jazeera reached out to the Palestinian Prisoners Club for comment, but did not receive a response at the time of publication. Israel is currently holding more than 5,000 Palestinian political prisoners, according to figures published by the rights group Adamir. At least 1,200 of them are held without charge or trial in a widely criticized practice known as administrative detention. That sounds familiar too. Administrative detention. They're just holding political prisoners there, just holding them there without charge or trial. Israeli forces often conduct near daily pre-dawn raids into the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem in an attempt to crack down on a growing armed resistance. Armed soldiers often prompt confrontations with Palestinian residents, arresting and even killing many of them. See this right here? By the way, confrontations could be anything. Confrontation doesn't necessarily mean that it was a physical confrontation. Sometimes a confrontation could just be one of the Israeli soldiers saying, "Why are you here? What are you doing?" That's also considered to be a confrontation. And I want to say that because I don't want people to assume that the Palestinians are just automatically becoming physical with the Israeli soldiers. We don't know that. But confrontation can mean a verbal confrontation or a physical confrontation. This article doesn't specify. So just keep that in mind. More than 200 Palestinians have been killed this year in the occupied Palestinian territories, and the United Nations has warned that 2023 is on track to be the deadliest year for Palestinians since it started recording fatalities. That's since it started recording. So we don't know before then. The deadliest year for the Palestinian people. These are the kind of situations where people like Hakeem Jeffries and Richie Torres, they don't want to hear about these situations. And when these situations happen, you never hear them comment on it. When Palestinians are beaten, when they're attacked, when they're killed, silence from people like Hakeem and people like Richie Torres, who says that they stand with the Israeli state government. The only time they tend to speak out is when they're saying what I just said to you, they're standing with the Israeli state government, or when they feel that the Israeli state government has been wronged. Now, why does this happen? Why are people like Hakeem Jeffries and Richie Torres willing to support a government that is allowing this type of behavior to happen? Because it's all about money. Because politicians like Hakeem and Richie take money from lobbyists. Whether it's organizations like J Street or You Have It, if you look at Open Secrets, you'll see Hakeem Jeffries, Richie Torres, they are funded by those groups. So this is why we continue to say you have to get corporate money. You have to get the money out of electoral politics, because the money does sway the politicians in reference to how they vote and who they support, even if they know they're in the wrong. And what is happening to the Palestinians is wrong. There have been several human rights organizations that have also said so. This is not an opinion that I have. But most of the politicians will not speak out about it. Let's go on. Palestinians and human rights groups have long accused Israeli forces of killing Palestinians under questionable circumstances. They say Israel does a poor job of prosecuting and punishing its forces in cases of wrongdoing. Investigations often end with no charges or lenient sentences, and in many cases, witnesses are not even summoned for questioning. Last month, an Israeli court acquitted a border police officer who was charged with reckless manslaughter in the deadly shooting of Iyad, I hope I'm saying that right, Iyad al-Halak, an autistic Palestinian man. And I want to highlight this for just a second. Autistic Palestinian man. Again, where have we seen this happen? We've seen it happen here in the United States, where we have had police forces go in and kill American citizens that are autistic or suffering from schizophrenia or have some type of mental health issue that police are actually not trained to deal with. And instead of having the right people come in, like a mental health expert, to deal with that situation, the police come in, they freak out, they don't know how to handle it, and oftentimes there's a deadly result. There's connections to what's happening abroad and what's happening here in the United States. And it goes on to say the court ruled that the officer was acting in self-defense when he shot the 32-year-old in occupied East Jerusalem's Old City 3 years ago. What are we going to do about this? This Thursday, there's a gentleman coming on. You may have seen him on Kim Iverson's show recently, Miko. He's going to come on to talk about this issue because I need to have someone on that can explain it in a way more detailed than I can. And he's very much against the whole Zionism concept. So he's going to come on and he's going to talk about this more. I'm going to bring up this example and other examples as well. But what I want to say is this cannot be ignored. These incidents, whether it's this gentleman who was beaten and branded, whether it is the Palestinian journalist who was shot and lost her life, whether it's the kids, the videos of the kids that I've seen beaten in the street, it doesn't matter who the person is. It needs to stop and it needs to be discussed. And more people need to hear about this side of it, because I feel like a lot of the people, not just the politicians, but a lot of the people that are quick to say that they support the Israeli state government and just completely just dismiss or ignore what's happening to the Palestinian people. Two things are happening here. Either those people know what's happening and they're choosing to ignore it, which is absolutely horrible. Those people are usually probably paid off, by the way, or they don't know. And a lot of people do not know. So we have to continue to get this message out to as many people as possible. It's such a mess. It's such a mess. How many more incidents? And I think it's good to listen to people who have been there, right? Like Kim Iverson was there. Max Blumenthal was there. Like when you talk to those journalists that have actually been there on the Gaza Strip, like they know what's happening to those people. And when we talk about mainstream media, they know what's happening to the Palestinian people too, but they're not telling you the whole story. And that's a big part of the problem. This is why we can't have these politicians connected monetarily to the lobbyists. All that needs to go. Lobbyists need to go. The corporate money, corporate greed needs to go. All that needs to go far away from politics. Super PACs need to go. And I'll give you a recent example, something that I was just watching the other day. So I saw Painkiller on Netflix, and then I recently just finished Dope Sick on Hulu about the opioid crisis. And one of the things that was very apparent to me was the reason why this epidemic went on for as long as it did, 2 decades, was because even when there was enough evidence to really take the Sackler family and throw them under the jail cell, you had people like Rudy Giuliani who had it pretty much in good with the DOJ and congressmen to come in and take the side of big pharma and protect the Sackler family. You had politicians in Congress that decided to look the other way, like the congressman, the senator from Connecticut, I forget his name, Senator Dodd, who decided to look the other way because he was getting money from big pharma. That's why you have to get rid of corporate money in electoral politics, because that's what they will do. Think of all the people who could have been saved. 2 decades. And the Sackler family still isn't behind bars. I'm going to try to see if I can actually talk to one of the U.S. attorneys that was involved in that case. So I got his contact information yesterday. I'm going to see if I can interview him, because I have to ask him, like, 2 decades and all the evidence was there. And when you watch it, and sorry to go off topic, but when you watch it, it's so frustrating because they had everything, crossed all the dots. And it made me so angry just to see how these corporations and these billionaires, and the Sackler family are billionaires, by the way, how these billionaires were able to get away with murdering over 500,000 people in this country. So when you look at people like Hakeem Jeffries and you look at people like Richie Torres and the connection that they have to the Israeli lobby, what do you think they would do? You think they're going to speak out against what's happening to people in Palestine? Not at all. They're willing to look the other way. Just like Senator Dodd from Connecticut was willing to look the other way when all those people were dying. Never forget that. I'm going to go to some of the comments here in the chat. Lana says, can't wait to hear RFK Jr.'s take on this story. So I've already seen on Twitter or X, what are we calling it today? Whatever. I already saw several people tag him in reference to that story. I haven't seen him say anything yet. Saul says Mandela was labeled a terrorist until 2005. It takes speaking out and pressure. Thank you for the super chat, Rob. Thank you, Sabby. Love to Palestine. You are welcome, Rob. You are welcome. Yeah, these are some of the things we got to talk about these things. Okay, we are going into our next story. If you have not heard, this Wednesday is the GOP primary debate. Yeah, unlike the Democratic Party, they're actually having a primary debate. But there's more news in reference to this, because it appears that apparently Donald Trump has decided not to participate in this debate. Instead, he is opting to have an interview with Tucker Carlson. Not joking around here. Now, the debate is supposed to be hosted by Fox News. So in a way, this is kind of a slap in the face to Fox News from Tucker Carlson and from Donald Trump. We have to remember when Fox News fired Tucker Carlson, one of the things that was released was that their plan was to promote Ron DeSantis this go round and not promote Donald Trump. So here you have a network already deciding who they're going to get behind because Ron DeSantis had a lot of the donor support. So the donors are connected to Ron DeSantis campaign. Ron DeSantis campaign is attached to Fox News, and the donors are also attached to Fox News. So in a way, this is kind of like a slap in the face from Donald Trump to Fox News saying, screw you guys, since it's been public now that you were basically going to snub me and you're going to get behind Ron DeSantis. And it's basically a slap in the face from Tucker Carlson because they fired him. If this interview airs at the same time as the debate, I don't think Fox is going to get the ratings that it wants. Let's be real. Without Donald Trump participating in the Republican debate, do people really want to tune in to watch it? He's the one that's going to bring them ratings. Let's get into this clip here from CNN. I have a couple clips I want to show you when they announced this. This is really interesting. Let's go ahead and dive in here.
All right. Well, good morning, Poppy. And yes, you're right. All indications that I'm getting from Donald Trump's team is that he is not going to participate in that debate next week. Of course, with the hedge, which I included in the story, is that this is Donald Trump we're talking about. I've covered him for years, and his team tells me that there's always a small chance that he may decide in the 11th hour that he ultimately wants to go. Of course, there's logistical questions to whether he would even be able to do that, but most likely he will not be on that debate stage next week. And instead, Donald Trump himself has been personally throwing out ideas for counter-programming. There have been discussions between Donald Trump's team and Tucker Carlson about an interview around the same time on Wednesday. Of course, this all comes as Donald Trump is feuding openly with Fox News and Rupert Murdoch, and Tucker Carlson clearly has left Fox News. And so some motivations there, I think, behind the scenes. I'm also told that Donald Trump's team wants some of his surrogates to represent him at the debate, especially if he is not there. People like Byron Donalds, a congressman from Florida, as well as Matt Gaetz, another congressman from Florida, and Kari Lake, the gubernatorial candidate in Arizona. All of these people potentially there to represent him in his absence. And one more thing, Poppy, that I find really interesting that I've been picking up in my conversation.
I just think this is kind of funny that Donald Trump has people to represent him if he's not representing the debate. I'm not going to be there. You guys go in my place. It's just kind of like, really? Like send all three. He's sending all three. If he sends Byron, Matt Gaetz, and he sends Kari Lake, it's just kind of like that sends a message, I think, to not only Fox News, but also to his base and to the other candidates to let them know, I already got people backing me. I already got people on the inside backing me. Interesting, huh?
Conversations is that Donald Trump has been telling people, this week even, that there was a dinner last month where Fox News executives, the president, Jay Wallace, as well as their chief executive, Suzanne Scott, they traveled to Bedminster and encouraged Donald Trump to participate in the debate. And Trump personally is telling people he thinks that shows that Fox is worried about ratings without him. And so he's feeling like he's in a strong position not to attend.
Yeah, because like, honestly, who's going to bring in the high ratings? It's going to be Donald Trump. So if he's not present, then not as many people are going to watch, especially if Tucker Carlson is hosting an interview with Donald Trump at the same time. That interview is probably going to get millions of views, like his other interviews that you guys have seen on Twitter recently. So yeah, that would really hurt Fox News. Now, I say this, I think that every candidate should debate. I say the same thing I said about Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden should have to debate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Marianne Williamson. I think there should be a Democrat primary debate. I don't think it's fair that Joe Biden's just able to just say, yeah, I'm not even going to try to campaign. I'm not going to do anything. I'm sitting on the beach while people are running for their lives in Hawaii. I'm sitting on the beach while people are struggling to breathe in East Palestine, Ohio. And I'm not going to participate in any type of debate. So we're not going to have a debate. I'd say the same thing for Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump should participate in the debate. That being said, I actually think that debate should not happen on Fox News. It's too messy. It's just too messy. They fired Tucker Carlson. The word got out that Rupert Murdoch actually wants to promote Ron DeSantis and not Donald Trump. It's just, it's messy over there. It is messy over there. Maybe that debate should happen on a different outlet. Now, I actually thought the GOP primary debates was going to happen on Rumble. I thought Rumble got the rights to that. So I'm not sure what's happening there. Maybe that is still going to happen as well, too. But I feel like it's just too messy over there at Fox News right now, okay? Like, it just, you ever had grandparents say that? My grandma used to say that. My grandma used to say, if I would say, like, Mom, or like, can I go over to so-and-so's house and da-da-da. If my grandma was around, my grandma would say, no, don't go over to their house. It's too messy. They too messy over there. It's too much going on. So that's how I feel. I feel like those debates should not happen in Fox News's house because it's too messy. It should happen somewhere else. And even if, and I know they won't do this, but even if it was MSNBC or CNN, or possibly it might be better for News Nation to host the GOP primary debates, because News Nation, they're on YouTube. They're pretty huge, but they're kind of middle of the road. Like, they interview Republican candidates and they interview Democrat candidates. Like, they represent both sides. So maybe it would actually be better if News Nation hosted the GOP primary debates because they're neutral. Just a suggestion. Let's go to the next clip here. There's another one from ABC News that I want to get to. And then we're going to go to a panel discussion about Trump's decision to not participate in these debates. People are losing it. The cable companies are like, no, we need our ratings, Trump, please.
Turned out to former President Trump. He has now 1 week to surrender on charges in Georgia tonight. Sources now telling ABC News that Trump's lawyers are set to negotiate how this will all play out, and it will likely be very different than what we saw before. Meantime, tonight, his rivals for the Republican presidential nomination in Georgia today and how they plan to compete against Trump. And will Trump debate them next week? ABC's Rachel Scott in Georgia tonight.
Donald Trump has just 1 week from today to surrender in Georgia.
Oh, yeah, there's also that, too. I forgot to mention that part. He also has to surrender in Georgia. So this is going to be a crazy week for Trump.
Former president expected to be photographed and fingerprinted. The local sheriff saying they're ready, that the jail where he'll be processed and released is open 24/7. And tonight, sources tell ABC News Trump's lawyers are now expected to meet with the DA's team to negotiate the terms as Trump continues to push false election claims, urging Republicans to rally around him.
Republicans have to be tough. The Republicans are great in many ways, but they don't fight as hard for this stuff, and they have to get a lot tougher.
But today, just miles away from that jail, a different message from Georgia's Republican Governor Brian Kemp. He has said flat out the 2020 election in Georgia was not stolen, and the party needs to move on.
So Brian Kemp, so this is important too, because Brian Kemp was one of the, at the time, one of the candidates that Trump did support, and Brian Kemp did support Donald Trump. But like many others, including people like Lindsey Graham, like after Trump went down, Brian was just like, I'm off this train. Let's go on.
That was 3 years ago. And if you're still mad about that, quit complaining about that.
A similar tone today from Trump's rival in the Republican primary, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
I hope that we will be focused on the future of the country rather than some of the other static that's out there right now.
But DeSantis has been reluctant to take on Trump over his election lies. The New York Times reporting that a strategy memo posted by a pro-DeSantis super PAC advises him to defend Trump when former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie attacks him in the first Republican debate next week.
Hey guys, Christie, how are you?
Today, Christie firing back.
If what he stands for is defending Donald Trump, then just drop out of the race and endorse him.
Chris Christie is another one. I don't understand why he's running. I feel like he just likes to try to remain relevant. Like, just when you think he's gone away, the next year comes and he pops up. He's either running for something else or he's trying to kiss someone else's ass. He's always trying to find a way to stay in the spotlight is what I've noticed about him. But yeah, so you heard that. If Trump comes up during the debate, apparently a super PAC for Ron DeSantis has already instructed him to, if Chris Christie attacks Donald Trump during the debate, you need to defend Donald Trump. See why I said we need to get rid of super PACs? This is just some of the things that they do. Let's continue.
All right, so let's bring in Rachel Scott with us live tonight from Georgia. Rachel, of course, all of these candidates strategizing how to take on Trump without alienating his supporters. But of course, they need those Trump supporters if they want to win the nomination themselves. In the meantime, I'm curious, what are your sources telling you tonight? Will Trump show up for the debate next week?
David, sources tell me tonight that the former president not only plans to skip the first debate entirely, but that he also plans to counter-program it, possibly with an interview with conservative news host Tucker Carlson. Remember, David, that first debate just 2 days before the deadline for Trump to surrender to authorities right here in Georgia. David.
Rachel Scott in Georgia tonight. Rachel, thank you.
I want to hear from you guys, though. I didn't do a poll. That's my bad. I should have done one. Do you think it's a mistake for Donald Trump not to show up to the debate? Do you guys think that's a mistake? He has a very comfortable lead in the polls, but so does Joe Biden. And my thing is I think every candidate should have to debate. But I do feel like because of the messiness at Fox News right now, that Fox News probably is not the outlet to host that debate. That could be what he's trying to avoid, is dealing with all that stuff at Fox News. But there's a panel that wanted to talk about this as well. And I thought this was pretty interesting. Let's go ahead and bring up this clip. I guess I should say, if you think Trump should debate, If you think Trump should debate, in the chat, say yes. If you think he should not debate, in the chat, say no. Gamer says, I'm no Trump fan, but he would destroy them all in a debate. Here we go.
We appreciate it. Let's talk now with our panel, NBC News Capitol Hill colleague Sahil Kapoor, former Maryland Democratic Congresswoman and NBC News political analyst Donna Edwards, and Brendan Buck, a former advisor to Republican Speaker John Boehner and Paul Ryan, as well as being an NBC News political analyst. So we didn't get to it with Shaq, but I want to talk about this campaign memo that was unearthed, that was kind of a way for the PAC, the DeSantis super PAC, to talk to the campaign itself. And Sahil, the highlights from this memo, Ron DeSantis, they suggest, needs to take a sledgehammer to Vivek Ramaswamy, the political newcomer who's rising in the polls, and that he should actually defend Donald Trump when Chris Christie inevitably attacks the president, and then needs to attack Joe Biden and the media no less than 3 to 5 times. I mean, what does this tell you about the campaign?
It shows the extraordinary jam that the Ron DeSantis campaign is in right now. The fact that they have no answer for how to deal with Trump. They're leery of criticizing him for fear that they alienate Republican voters who are loyal to him. There's some leeriness of ignoring him as well because he's above 50% and running away with the nomination. And we should note that this was not a campaign product. This was by the super PAC. The campaign has sort of distanced itself from this memo, but it does show that the DeSantis orbit, the campaign is not going the way they wanted it to go. And if Donald Trump is not on the stage, one thing you can do is criticize him for not debating the way Chris Christie is doing. If you want to make your case, if you want to be president, at least show up. This memo suggests that, they're leery of going down that road.
So I just want to add, when this clip was released, at that point in time, Donald Trump was at like 50%. I think now he's hovering around 59, 60%. So just keep that in mind. Just wanted to add that in there. But yeah, I think it's very telling about the DeSantis campaign if they feel that he should defend Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis numbers are decreasing. They're not increasing. Vivek's numbers are increasing. Trump's numbers are increasing. So I don't know, maybe they feel that will save Ron DeSantis's campaign. I doubt it. I just think he's not likable. I don't know if you can teach likability.
Strategic standpoint, Brendan, is Donald Trump making the right decision by skipping the debate and instead spending time with Tucker Carlson in whatever capacity that turns out to be?
Yeah, I don't blame him at all for it. I mean, he's obviously far ahead in the race, but also he seems to be the only person actually trying to win the race. You know, we'll see what happens on the debate stage, but it really feels like we're not actually having a campaign. And if Ron DeSantis, the closest alternative, is going to take a pass and is going to defend the person beating him, then what's the point? Why are we even doing this? And so if they're not actually going to run a campaign, if they're not actually going to come after him, why submit yourself to be there in the first place? I actually think it's the perfect right strategy.
Well, and what?
But okay, so to that point where he just said, if they're not actively running a campaign, but they are actively running campaigns. Vivek Ramaswamy is going across this country actively running a campaign. We just talked about him recently. I told you guys, he went from 0.0% to 3%. Excuse me, third place. 0.0% to third place in the polls. He shot up the poll. So the thing is like, they are out there actively campaigning. This is the same talking point that CNN is saying about RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson. They're saying that Joe Biden doesn't actually have, real campaigns or real competitors coming after him, right? They keep saying that over and over. And meanwhile, like RFK Jr. is going across the country, Marianne Williamson is going across the country. They are actively campaigning. And when I listen to mainstream media say there's no active campaigns or the people aren't really campaigning, that's just an outright lie. They are out there campaigning. Joe Biden is sitting at home. Joe Biden's the one that's not out there, actively campaigning. So it's just, I get this idea that because you're this far ahead in the polls, you feel like maybe you should not have to debate. But I don't think that's fair. I think every candidate should debate. And when I say every, I mean every. That includes third party. That includes independent candidates. I don't think it should just be limited to certain people. I think the American people deserve to hear from everyone.
What do you think about the RNC's role in all of this? We know that the chairwoman, Ronna McDaniel, made a personal plea to Donald Trump. There's some reporting out there that the executives from Fox News made an entry to try and convince him to be there. And Trump doesn't seem to care. Does the RNC have any power when it comes to the shepherding of this party?
And it's not a new thing either. I mean, it's been Donald Trump's party and infrastructure for a really long time. And she's tried to wrestle it back and give at least the appearance that there is a primary going on here. But I think we're squinting pretty hard to see an actual primary. And I think that he doesn't really need much of them. And I think all of those other people on the stage need Donald Trump much more than he needs them.
So, Donna, if you're one of these other Republicans on the stage, I know that might be difficult for you to try and put yourself in that place, but how do you handle that? Obviously, even though he won't be there, Donald Trump will be the proverbial elephant in the room. How do these Republican challengers to him try and find a way to break through without him there, but him being the most important topic?
Well, there you have it. Donald Trump is sucking up all the oxygen, whether he's on the stage or not. And I think for some of these candidates, to the extent, as Brendan said, that they are unwilling to go after Donald Trump, then it means that they're not willing to replace him. And I think voters will see that. And certainly.
But how are they going to go after Donald Trump if he's not there? So let me ask you guys this question. I'm going to try to see if I can add the poll. It may let me do it. It may not let me do it. I'm not sure. How are they going to go after Donald Trump if he's not present on the debate stage? Because there's not going to be a rebuttal. Like, there's no one. Who are they going to be arguing with besides each other? I would think if he's not present, they're mainly going to be focusing on each other. Like Ron DeSantis might be focusing more so on Vivek, or Vivek might focus more so on Ron DeSantis so he can slide up in that second place spot, right? But if he's not there, there's no rebuttal. I don't know. Let me come out of here. Sorry. I got my thing. I'm going to try to add that poll if it lets me. We'll see.
Mr. Trump has seen that because he doesn't even see fit to show up on the stage with them. So, I mean, other than Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson, who are not going anywhere in the polls, nobody else seems willing to take on the front runner, who is Donald Trump. And to the extent that they don't do that, there is no space for them to win this nomination.
I mean,
Why do they keep mentioning? Have you guys noticed they continue to mention Asa Hutchinson when Asa Hutchinson, I believe, is at the very, very bottom of the poll? But I continue to see repeated interviews with Asa Hutchinson on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. They continue interviewing this guy. This guy is all the way at the bottom. I just don't understand it. But I guess he's their kind of politician, right? Interesting.
I'm a little curious, if you decide you're going to run against Donald Trump, what is there to lose by going after him on this debate stage? You've already said that you want to challenge him. You've already said you don't think he's the best nominee for president. Why is there any benefit to trying to just kiss up to him in a stage like this?
Well, I mean, that is the question that everyone's asking. And I think for those Republicans, if you're a Republican voter, why would you vote for the look-alike when you can vote for the real thing? And I think that that's the position that they're in. And as long as those other candidates occupy that space, this is Donald Trump's nomination to run away with.
It's self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, guys, I added that poll. It's pinned to the top of the live chat. You should see it. You may have to refresh, actually. Hold on, let me see. Okay, yeah, I see it. Yeah, so that poll is there now. So you guys can do that. And Eric, we can show that towards the end or right after this segment if you want to. Probably towards the end so it gets more votes. But you guys can vote on that now. Should Trump attend the debates? But let's go on. Sorry.
Ron DeSantis might want to run for president again someday. Right. Tim Scott probably needs to get reelected in South Carolina at some point. Mm-hmm. So they all have to think about their future. And it seems like a lot of these campaigns were really just banking on the idea that Donald Trump was going to self-destruct, he was going to implode, and then they'd be there. Right. That's not happening. I don't know why you would think that, given the last 8 years, that would actually take place, but it's clearly not happening. And so now I think they're just worried about their own futures.
Mm-hmm. Some of them may all.
There you go. Because the thing is like, if they attack Trump too harshly, what does that mean for the rest of their political career, right? Are they going to get reelected? I'm sure some of their constituents also support Donald Trump. So they're kind of in a sticky situation. Like, do you defend Donald Trump or do you attack Donald Trump? Or do you kind of try to play it in the middle, right? Mm-hmm.
Also be running for vice president. Some of them also may be hoping that if they're nice to Donald Trump, he'll give them a position in what may be a second presidential term. But this is an absolute gift to Donald Trump to have the candidate with 15% attacking the candidate with 8%, the sledgehammer to the guy who's polling less than you and the guy who's above 50% and climbing, I should add, is not on the debate stage. He's in a dominant position right now. Sometimes it's hard to figure out who the more dominant candidate in their own primary is, Joe Biden or Donald Trump.
Right. Speaking of candidates that appear to remain insignificant in the Republican primary, let's see what the former Vice President Mike Pence had to say. He was at an event in Georgia today. This is what he said when he got off stage. Take a listen.
Here comes the robot.
What impact do those false claims have on the Republican Party going forward?
Last question.
Well, honestly, I think Republican primary voters aren't interested in looking in the rearview mirror. There's too many challenges facing American families today.
If that's the case, then why is Donald Trump polling at like 60% in the Republican primary?
So he's obviously responding to Trump's false election claims. He clearly had a hard time answering that question. Yeah. He's the one that's been in the line of fire the most on this, Brendan. How's he handling this? It's not seem to be helping him at all?
Well, he seems to be getting a little closer and closer to criticizing Donald Trump all the time. And that's the person I'm most interested in seeing on the debate stage. Does he sort of say, okay, this is my moment. This is not somebody who has to run for re-election for really anything ever again. Like, this is his one time to say, this is a person I stood next to for 4 years, and I can tell you he is not the right person to lead it. Here's why. No one has made that point. People are giving economic speeches. People are rolling out energy plans. No one has given a clear explanation for why Donald Trump should not be president. No one is better positioned to do that than Mike Pence. We'll see.
Okay. So
actually, it kind of makes Mike Pence look like a traitor. He's like, people are talking about the economy. No one's talking about, well, Donald Trump should not be president. I think, according to the polls, the number one issue most Americans are focused on right now is the economy. So if you're running a campaign and you're not focusing on the economy, I would be concerned. If your campaign is Donald Trump should not be president of the United States, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's just, Like if you're running on Trump bad, I think you're helping Trump win. If you just say Trump bad and you have no policies, you're not focusing on the economy, which most people care about right now, then I think you're just, especially Mike Pence, you were his vice president. Robot clown.
Sahil, let's talk about the great reporting that you had this week with our colleague Alan Smith regarding the standoff in the Congress and the Senate over the confirmation of military promotions. You guys picked up some audio of Kyrsten Sinema in a private event in Arizona where she suggests, now remember she's an independent now, not a Democrat, but suggests that Tuberville and the administration need to find common ground when it comes to this DOD policy on paying for the travel of service members who are seeking abortions. What's her end game here? We know that she tries to be the great diplomat on the Senate floor. Can she pull it off in this regard?
It's hard.
We're going to end up stopping around about here because they get into the Kyrsten Sinema thing. But in reference to Kyrsten Sinema, I think Kyrsten Sinema is trying to position herself to be a part of someone's administration, whether that's a future Biden administration or a Trump administration. That's what I think Kyrsten Sinema is doing. I think she's trying to put herself kind of in this middle of the road kind of lane so that she can be a part of someone's cabinet. Sinema likes money. And she's really friendly with the hedge fund guys. So that's interesting. Go ahead and take that poll, guys, because I'm curious to see your results. And we'll go ahead and take Roger's comment on Rockfin. Sorry, wrong pipe. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Sab, I've been checking out how much of an ally automatic voter registration has been to the registered indie movement, seeing that they automatically register those who are not already registered to vote, register under indie. This will have a huge impact by decades in as more 18-year-olds come to visit DMV ever since those laws passed in their state. It's why indie count's going up. Richie and Hakeem days are numbered. Yeah, I actually have a little piece about that I want to show people when we get into the Cornell West story that I think is important. And I think you may not know about this, but it's a reference to Massachusetts. But again, like what Roger said, it's kind of happening across the board. So I want people to be aware of that. Let's go to more comments and then we'll get to the next story. Thank you for the super chat, Miss. How do I send you email on leads to stories? I tried to super chat. It says edit and won't let me send. It's about Vivek. Oh, just send it to, it's under, my email address is in the description of all of my videos. So if you just click on the description, you should see my email address there with other links. Yeah, that's where the email is. Just email it to me. Lawrence says, get them damn networks out of the debates. Turn it over to LWV. Thank you for the super chat, Black Thoughts. Lived in Israel. Don't talk about what I've seen. Mika says, watching Tucker live and Fox rerun. Vic Merrill's head says, you and Kim are honest and have guts. Oh, thank you. That's sweet. And thank you for this, Miss. Lack of response on a blue state disaster in an election year tells me they know something we don't and aren't worried about losing. Yeah, I think they just want to fundraise, like, to be honest with you. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that, Eric. Let me spell that out for people. Turn it over to LWV is the League of Women Voters. Just letting you guys know. All right. Shout out to Aisha for being a member for 5 months. Mainstream media is like narcissistic abusers. Whatever they say, the opposite is true. And it's all to distract and manipulate us away from the truth. Well said. And thank you, Eric. Mike Pence looks like one of those marionette puppets on Thunderbirds. Oh no. Oh dear. I don't know what to say there. How are we on the poll, Eric? You want to do it now or later? Let me know. Oh, it looks like you have it up. Okay. Yeah. Cool. All right. I guess the rest of you didn't want to vote. Okay. Should Trump attend the debate? 53% of you said yes. 38% of you said no. And 9% said you are not sure. Okay. Interesting. So it looks like the majority of you think that he should attend the debate. Well, we shall see what happens. I'll probably talk about that on Thursday since I'm not live on Wednesday. The primary debate, I believe, is this Wednesday. All right, we're going to go to this next story here. If you did not know, Detainee Haiphong actually just addressed the UN Security Council in reference to NATO's Ukraine aid. So, we've talked a lot in reference to the billions of dollars that's gone out the door to Ukraine, the Pentagon failing audits, and there seems to just be no accountability here. Like money is just flying out the window. And it seems like our government doesn't have to explain where it's going because it's going to the military industrial complex. But you notice they have to explain where it's going when it's going to any type of social programs or something to help the people. Considering the fact that Joe Biden announced that he was giving $700 per household to people in Hawaii, it's really a slap in the face when you see billions of dollars go out the door to Ukraine, but we only want to give people $700 per household to one of our own states. So Danny did the damn thing. Let's give Danny a shout out over here. If you haven't seen this, you're going to see this now. I'll have to reach out to Danny probably later on, probably not now because he's probably exhausted from this trip. But I'll reach out to Danny later on to have him come on and talk about how this whole process went, because we've had people do this a number of times before. They present to the UN, but I never really understood the process, like what happens after this, So let's go ahead and get into it.
I now give the floor to Mr. Detainee Haiphong.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the council, Mr. President. Today I'm here as a journalist who has dedicated the last 10 years of my life writing about and speaking out against the long record of human rights abuses and war crimes committed by my country of birth, the United States. I don't consider this a hobby or even a profession, but rather a duty to all of humanity and those who want to see a better and more peaceful future. I am here too as a U.S. citizen who has witnessed tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars go to funding and arming a proxy war against Russia, while people in the U.S., ordinary people, suffer from rising levels of poverty, homelessness, suicide, and economic insecurity. As Martin Luther King Jr. said in 1958, true peace is not merely the absence of tension, but the presence of justice. On June 2nd, 2023, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken gave a speech in Helsinki where he stated that military support for Ukraine must be prioritized over diplomacy. The argument goes that a steady supply of arms to Ukraine will turn the tide on the battlefield and force Russia to the negotiating table.
And we see that has not happened. All of the money that's been sent to Ukraine, all the weapons, all the packages that they have sent to Ukraine, you see that has not turned the table in reference to the war with Russia. They're not at the negotiating table. When they did have the opportunity to negotiate earlier on. Of course, the United States didn't want that. NATO didn't want that. And we've just seen this war continue to escalate. Ukraine is losing. So all of the billions of dollars and the weapons that we've given to Ukraine, it's not helping them win this war, which experts predicted they would not be able to win at the very beginning in the first place. So what's all the money for?
Blinken is supposed to be the U.S.'s top diplomat, not a champion of escalating conflict. However, the sentiment that he communicated has been a foundational feature of the justifications given for the West's continued flow of arms to Ukraine. The facts, however, undermine Blinken's assertions. First, U.S. and Western arms are anathema to resolving conflict. The U.S. is the biggest arms exporter in the world, comprising around 40% of all global arms sales. These arms have been instrumental in the bloodiest wars of our last 2 generations, including the US-led invasions of Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and Syria. US arms play a major role in escalating tensions in the Korean Peninsula and the military encirclement of Russia and China, which has ushered in a new Cold War and all of the risks that come with it. Second, it was never Russia that needed to be forced to the negotiating table. Back in December 2021, if we remember, Russia provided draft proposals of security guarantees to the US and to NATO that were meant to serve as the basis of dialogue and negotiation.
And that's the message. That's actually the narrative that mainstream media continues to repeat. They make it seem like Russia never wanted to negotiate. They make it seem like, Vladimir Putin's, though he has his faults as well, but they make it seem like Vladimir Putin has not tried to be reasonable in any way, shape, or form, not once through this entire process. And that's not true. So when they say, like, if you watch mainstream media, the way they explain it, they make it seem like Russia is being unreasonable and is not willing to come to the negotiating table when they were actually willing to do that at the very beginning.
They were summarily rejected. By late January 2022, the US announced 200,000 pounds of what was deemed quote unquote lethal aid to Ukraine in an obvious signal of escalation. In April 2022, both US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin traveled to Ukraine just weeks after a peace deal fell through and admitted that the US was all in on winning the current fight in Ukraine. What they meant by this was that the US was fully committed to corralling its own military arsenal and that of its NATO partners in a proxy war against Russia to the last Ukrainian. The absence of diplomacy in times of conflict cannot but lead to escalation. That Russia's security, and for that matter, the security of the entire world, has been dismissed so summarily by the West is proof enough that the ceaseless supply of arms to Ukraine endangers peace. Weapons to Ukraine do not represent some kind of quote-unquote arsenal of democracy, as some in the US foreign policy establishment tout. NATO countries have already provided $40 billion in weapons to Ukraine over the span of this conflict, and we have witnessed these weapons become heavier, deadlier, and more provocative.
This is another interesting thing that Danny also points out here that I think sometimes people may not really think about. It's not just obviously the US that's been giving them weapons and aid. It was also our allies, like Germany sent in Leopard tanks, France gave them aid. I'm trying to think of who else. All the NATO allies like gave them aid. We saw a lot of things happen monetarily that actually shows that those other countries were trying to help them too. So when I talk about the money, one thing to keep in mind, I've mainly just been talking about what we've sent. I've mainly just talked about the billions of dollars that have come from the United States. And that one time I covered about Germany sending in the Leopard tanks, but just consider the fact that a lot has come their way and they're still losing.
Stymieing the possibility of a negotiated settlement to this conflict. Many of these weapons have landed on the black market to drug cartels, criminal organizations, and indeed neo-Nazi and fascist elements, many of which now make up parts of Ukraine's armed forces.
And in countries in Africa too, because somehow some of those weapons ended up in countries in Africa.
Furthermore, NATO has essentially armed Ukrainian army after Ukrainian army at the expense of its own arsenal. The New York Times sounded the alarm 8 months ago that Ukraine is now the location of an artillery and tank war, the likes of which the West would.
This guy, we'll come back to Danny. This guy right here, he was cracking me up for a little bit because I'm like, what is he doing? Where'd it go? That guy was like on his phone. What happened to that guy? Okay, I guess the guy is gone now. I'm sorry.
Many of these weapons have landed on the black market to drug cartels, criminal organizations, and indeed neo-Nazi and fascist elements, many of which now make up parts of Ukraine's armed forces. Furthermore, NATO has essentially armed Ukrainian army after Ukrainian army at the expense of its own arsenal. The New York Times sounded the alarm 8 months ago that Ukraine is now the location of an artillery and
This guy right here. What's he doing? Who you got to call? Whose call you got to take? I don't know.
tank war, the likes of which the West was not prepared to fight long term. And if this is the case, then rational minds may assume that the West would cease its supply of deadly weaponry. But the opposite has occurred. The U.S. approved of sending cluster munitions to Ukraine last month, the same munitions that continue to kill and explode on civilians in Laos decades after the U.S. invasion there, and which have long been condemned by over 100 countries worldwide.
Yep.
I'm a journalist and a geopolitical analyst, not a military expert. But such experts in recent months have come clean about the limitations of Western firepower. Camille Grand, former Assistant Secretary General of Defense Investment at NATO, stated that, quote, a day in Ukraine is a month or more in Afghanistan, end quote. She is referencing the fact that Ukraine burns through nearly half of the artillery produced in the United States in a single day.
And we were in Afghanistan for over 20 years. So that's just something to think about, guys.
Per month in a single day. Former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, James Stavridis, acknowledged last May that analysts were correct to assume that Ukraine is burning through a year's worth of U.S. production monthly. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and U.S. President Joe Biden have both acknowledged these weapons shortages, with Biden admitting during his announcement of cluster munitions for Ukraine that, quote, this is a war relating to munitions, and they're running out of ammunition, and we're low on it, end quote. And I'm not even touching on issues of personnel, training, and other logistical items here.
What happens when they run out of weapons, you guys? Because this is something I've been wondering too. There's a shortage of some of these weapons that the U.S. government has been sending to Ukraine. What happens when they run out of these weapons? I mean, it's just the way that they're burning through these weapons per day. They're just burning through it. And it's just, okay, we're done. Let's go back to the United States to give us more money and give us more aid.
All of these problems have come to a head as the last several months saw Ukraine's spring counteroffensive gain much discussion. For months, political and military officials in the West regularly broadcasted to media outlets of an oncoming, victorious offensive that would take large amounts of territory from Russia. Yet at the same time, Ukraine, and in particular its head of state, Volodymyr Zelensky, repeatedly demanded that the West increase its supply of heavy weaponry, including air power. Zelensky has blamed over and over the West for its lackluster supply of arms in conjunction with the months-long delay of this counteroffensive against Russia. Now, this counteroffensive is in its third month, and the results have been disastrous. Around 30% of NATO's weapon supplies to Ukraine have been destroyed. The death toll on the battlefield is staggering. An estimated 43,000 Ukrainian forces have been killed.
That's crazy, right? Remember what they said at the World Economic Forum? There was a statement there that said we plan to continue this until the last Ukrainian. These people are dying. They know it's like to go into this war that they knew they really could not. You know, like, how are you going to beat Russia? And if it ever got to the point where Russia felt like, okay, this is getting to be too much, they can always just knock on China's door and say, come help us out. The United States government, and I also feel like NATO, they basically sent these people, they sent these soldiers to their death. Usually I would say, well, you got this percentage of a chance. But with this situation, I feel like, no, they don't have a chance.
And reports are surfacing that local morgues in Ukraine are seeing nearly double the bodies since the counteroffensive began. And for what? The optimism of Western officials and diplomats has waned with many now acknowledging that Ukraine has not even penetrated Russia's first defensive line. So I think the better question then is cui bono? Who benefits and what benefits from Western arms being poured into Ukraine? Certainly not Ukraine if the results of the counteroffensive and the conflict as a whole are the measure. And it certainly isn't global peace instability either. For all the benefits that come from an emerging multipolar world, the incessant militarization of Ukraine pushed by the West is helping fuel a worldwide economic slowdown and the potential of major power conflict, which could very well take on a nuclear character. So a simple answer to this question is the arms industry, the corporations that have profited mightily from this conflict. Shareholders of the largest military contractors are being paid handsomely since the conflict began as profits soar. The top 25 Western military contractors have seen their revenues increase by 11% over the past year to $212 billion. Arms sales are expected to increase to $450 billion in total by the end of 2023, an increase of $47 billion thanks to the Ukraine conflict.
Just think about what we could do with all of that money. $44 billion, $24 billion. Like, we could feed people in this country. But no, it's more profitable for our government to push war. We could end homelessness. Like, if we took some of that money from the military, from the defense budget, there's over $800 billion in the defense budget, okay? If we took some of that money, we could try to end homelessness in this country. We could feed every kid at every school in this country. But no, war.
This bonanza in arms sales is thus making the slim minority of the richest people richer, while the rest of the world is left to resolve the myriad of problems left in the wake of this conflict. One of the primary responsibilities of the United Nations Security Council, as stated by the UN Charter, is the maintenance of international peace and stability. Ongoing Western arms sales to Ukraine are not only a violation of the UN Charter, but they also reveal the geopolitical realities that undergird this conflict. Indeed, it would be simplistic to claim that profits alone from Western arms sales are what is driving a wedge in the cause of peace. The United States, where I reside, has a long record of waging unilateral military conflict on a global scale in contravention of the UN Charter, with 800 plus foreign military bases, 11 command structures, and a public military budget of nearly $1 trillion US. There is now an open conflict within the US foreign policy establishment over whether Ukraine and arming Ukraine to maximum effect is a good idea, or whether other military matters deserve more attention, with a leaked memo from top Air Force brass claiming that the US must prepare to go to war with China by 2025. So Ukraine thus finds itself in the eye of a much larger storm, that of a US policy of great power competition, or what is better termed great power confrontation, led by the United States. Peace and stability is not possible so long as the West pursues a foreign policy of unilateral interventionism in Ukraine to fulfill a larger goal, a larger geopolitical goal of unipolarity.
You know what's really sad is that I'm just thinking about all the people in Ukraine that really believe the US is helping them, and that really believe that their country is going to be better after all this is over. Economically, their country is going to be ruined. You don't have to look at too many other examples just to prove that, but economically, this is going to be done. And then what's going to happen to those people then? That's the thing, is like, you know, I feel like the US is really good at selling a story, dropping off the bomb, running away, and when the bomb explodes, the US is nowhere to be found. Because that's what's going to happen. Think about the economy in Ukraine. When all this is over, what's going to happen to the economy in Ukraine? What's going to happen if they start to run out of soldiers?
This policy runs completely counter to the principles of the UN Charter. The continued flow of arms to Ukraine is a violation of Article 2, Section 3 of this charter, requiring member states to resolve conflict in a peaceful manner. And these arms only prolong the conflict with devastating consequences. Yep. The U.S. and its Western partners, and whoever goes along with it, must learn to operate within the framework of international law, just like all other member states, or the world will face the continued threat of instability and war, no matter the efforts of this Security Council and other United Nations bodies. Thank you so much for your time.
So kudos to Danny. This is on his channel. If you're not following Danny, I think most of you probably already are, but if you're not following Danny, you should. Danny Haiphong's his channel, and it's called Danny Haiphong Addresses UN Security Council on NATO's Ukraine aid. So definitely check out Danny's channel. He focuses primarily on geopolitics. So if you want to hear like more news about foreign policy, more international news in general, like you should check out his channel because he talks a lot about that. But I have to say this, and I want to be very clear here. Like, it boggles my mind how so many people would not even question the intentions of NATO and the US government, particularly those of us that remember the war in Iraq. And I don't care. Like, you don't come away from that after they sold us a lie in reference to the war in Iraq, when they told us that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Turns out there were no weapons of mass destruction. So they lied to us about the war in Iraq. And a lot of us got it wrong. And that included myself. But I learned something from that. And I said, well, damn, they lied to us. What else have they lied to us about? So going forward with me, it's like with all these other conflicts, I am always skeptical because it's just the amount of a people who have been so easily convinced that Russia is this boogeyman and China is this boogeyman. How many of those people actually took a step back and thought about the economic reasons in reference to this war? Have thought about the fact that China has the top largest banks in the world. If you look at the top 10, China has most of them. The fact that China actually has done a pretty good job, they're not perfect, but a pretty good job of trying to eradicate homelessness in China. And I only know these things because a lot of my students were from China. So they explained a lot of these things to me. So it was like gone were the days of people coming from China to study in the United States and trying to get the visa to stay in the United States. Most of my students had no intention of staying here. Most of my students wanted to go back home because they said they knew they would be guaranteed a job and they were guaranteed housing. And so I guess I just don't understand why more Americans are not willing to question any type of war that the US government and particularly mainstream media convince you is the right thing to do after everything that we saw with the war in Iraq. And even after like Afghanistan, like, I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't understand how people won't question it. Like, why would you trust these people after they lied to us? And it's not even a little lie, It wasn't like Saddam Hussein has like someone held hostage that, could potentially be a US soldier. It wasn't even something like that, It was weapons of mass destruction. Like, they had to go big and extreme with it. So for me, I just don't understand how people are so convinced in this country to believe everything the US government tells you. I just told you guys earlier today about the congressmen and the senators and Rudy Giuliani about how they went to bat for Big Pharma and they protected the Sackler family and allowed them to continue poisoning the American people for another freaking decade. So why would you trust these people? Everything that happens in DC revolves around money. No money, no congressmen, no senators. Something to think about. I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat. Dave says Ukraine is winning on corporate media. LOL. I know, right? Like CNN actually finally admitted that they weren't, because they just couldn't hide that anymore. Anna says Ukraine is a big windfall for Lockheed, Raytheon, etc., and DC by extension. Thank you, Benji. Great work, Sabrina. Thank you. Cheers from Switzerland. Well, cheers. Thank you, Dogs, for the win. So Russian-occupied Ukraine is going to be a prosperous, peaceful country? I don't know, Dogs for the win. And Kali says, if they tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it over and over, it becomes truth. This is true. This is true. They just keep they have to be repetitive. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric. You can put that one back up there. I meant to click on something else, and I think okay, maybe you didn't have something there. I don't know what happened. I'll go ahead and take the comment on Rockfin, and then we'll go to the next story. Thank you so much for the tip, Roger. Sabrina, back when you said Ron, not Don, is who we need to be concerned about. I got to be honest. I never bought into that. I just always believed he was a joke. Turns out I was right. All right, Donald, put the GOP on a path that they will never return from. Got them thinking about workers. Who the hell wants to work for Donald anyway? Talk about the boss from hell. Some of these people are masochists. And I think there's a little bit more towards the bottom, or maybe that was the whole. Okay, maybe not. Okay. Cornell West. A couple of weeks ago, I covered a story that the Daily Beast reported about Cornell West. I was like, here comes the first smear, guys. There's going to be many more as we get into 2024, right? They put out a story saying that Cornell West owed, hundreds of thousands of dollars in back taxes and that he hasn't paid child support, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things I pointed out in that article was that there were no receipts. And whenever you're talking about finances, I want you to show me some receipts. Now, since that article was released, Cornell West has actually appeared on the Breakfast Club, and he did, respond to that. And he said that they're not telling the truth. They're not being honest. Cornell West will be here Tuesday afternoon. So that'll be a second time back on since his campaign was announced. So I can talk to him more about this. But now ABC News has basically taken that article from the Daily Beast and they've gone one step further. They're basically trying to really make Dr. West look like he's a bad person. Now I want to start off by saying this. For the people at ABC who wrote this article, Abby Cruz and Laura Gersoni, coming after people about tax information, this is not the OWN that you think it is. Like, that's what kills me. It's like, do you not realize people don't like the IRS? So you come after for that. I'm just like, let's go into the article. Green Party candidate Cornel West owes more than $500,000 in taxes and child support. Records. One expert said voters have a right to know why this isn't disclosed. Do we? How many politicians and presidents owe taxes or didn't pay taxes? Donald Trump had issues with his taxes. Like, a lot of us just really don't like the IRS, man. So that's why, like, this story, I was just kind of like, this is not the OWN you think it is. Especially for those of us in the Black community. Like, to me, you just kind of come across like a snitch. Let me go on. Okie dokie. Philosopher and presidential Green Party candidate Cornel West currently owes more than $500,000 between unpaid taxes and unpaid child support, according to tax records. Records show West owes nearly $466,000 in federal income taxes from 2013 until 2017. Okay. Define owe. Because when it comes to taxes, you can owe taxes, but you can also be a part of a payment plan. Okay? Like, and those of you file your own taxes, you know these things. Like, I've had to do this multiple times where like we file the taxes and I'm like, oh, this is what I owe. Yeah, definitely can't pay that right now. So you have an option to do that installment payment plan. There's like 3 different options, I think, but you have an option to sign up as a payment plan. And then basically you make a monthly payment until you pay off the balance. So technically you can say that he owes $466,000, but that doesn't mean he's not paying his balance. That's why I asked for receipts. I don't see any receipts. You know, they make it sound like Cornell West just didn't pay any taxes. Don't you think that if he didn't pay taxes all these years, don't you think the IRS would have came after Cornell West already, seized some of his property and his possessions? This is how foolish these people are. Like a lot of American people, let's think about this. A lot of people are going to read this article and not do their due diligence, especially if they've never filed their own taxes. They're not really going to think about that. Don't you think if that was the case and he wasn't a part of any type of payment plan or trying to pay this balance down, don't you think the IRS would have came to Cornell West and seized his possessions by now? Since 2013, it's 2023. Let's continue. Boy, I tell you. This came after he incurred and later repaid a debt of nearly $725,000 from 1998 to 2005 and more than $34,000 in 2008, according to tax records in Mercer County, New Jersey, where he owns a home. Oh, God forbid he own a home. God forbid he owes taxes and he owns a home. So what? My God. This one here. Additionally, West has an outstanding $49,500 child support judgment from 2003 records show. Again, how do you know he doesn't have a payment plan to be a part of that? And let me tell you something about child support, okay? Let me tell you something. I sincerely hope they don't try to use this line towards Black people and people who are living below the poverty line about you should not support him because he owed child support, because they're going to look at you and laugh in your face. A lot of people owe child support. The point is, even if it's owed, how do you know there's not some type of payment in place? Think about this, guys. If he owes this from 2003, it is 2023. You don't think they would have came after Cornell West already? As public of a figure as he is? Come on. They used to do these gigs, right? Like, so they used to do this thing where they would try to get guys who owe child support, right? So they would actually send them some type of letter or invite and say that you won tickets to like a game. So like Massachusetts, they would say, you just won all these tickets to the Red Sox game, free tickets, free this, yada, yada, or Celtics, etc. They get all these guys in a room to go pick up the free tickets and they bust them for unpaid child support. True story. Now, as public as Cornell West is, he's not someone who's difficult to find. Those guys I just told you about show up for the free tickets. Those guys were hiding. They weren't that easy to find. But Cornell West is a public figure. He's been on national media. He's been on independent media. He's a professor. He's not difficult to find. So don't you think they would have came after him? Let me continue. Boy, I tell you. The debts were first reported by the Daily Beast. And guys, that was weeks ago. I covered that story from the Daily Beast weeks ago. So that's how late these two journalists are with writing this article. Where the hell were they weeks ago? Let me continue. The tax debts have not been paid off as of 30 days ago. The last available data, according to Mercer County records. ABC News reached out to West and his campaign to see if West had plans to pay off the debt or set up a payment plan. They have not returned those requests for comment because that's really none of your damn business. Why do you need to know what I have set up to pay off my taxes or to pay off child support or anything like that? Why you need to know that? These the kind of things is just, they looking into anybody else's tax records? Think about it, guys. They looking into RFK's tax records. They looking into Marianne's tax records. They looking into Biden's tax records. His business dealings in Ukraine. They looking into that. I'm going to show you why they're doing this. The outstanding child support payment is owed to Atul Gurtas, his former partner and mother of his children. ABC News was unable to reach Gurtas for comment. So here's my problem right here. What I don't like about this is now you're getting kids involved. And to me, I feel like kids should be off limits. That's just me. I don't care. You're running for office, you're a celebrity, whatever. I feel like children should be off limits. Let me continue. While it's not clear how long West didn't pay child support, New Jersey family lawyer Kathleen Stockton said that the amount of money appears substantial. So you're going to get on him for not paying child support, but you don't know how long he hasn't paid child support? Okay. The average U.S. child support obligation is about $5,800 per year, according to census data, making West nearly $50,000 more than 8 times that. Stockton noted that it is possible West paid Gurtas and didn't register it with the court, though West has given no indication of that. If that's possible, why did you write this article? If that's possible, don't you think you should have tried to find information about that if you're going to write this article? This is ABC News, guys. This is not, we talked about the Daily Beast, but this is ABC News. When the question of his debts was brought up on the Breakfast Club radio morning show last week, West told the radio show host Charlemagne the God that they were being used as a distraction from his presidential campaign, which has focused on ending poverty, mass incarceration, and environmental degradation. Anytime you shine a flashlight under somebody's clothes, you're going to find all kind of mess, because that's what it is to be human. Earlier on the show, West mentioned he was broke as the 10 Commandments financially, personally, collectively. West's debts are personal, not related to the campaign, so they may not directly bear on the finances of his candidacy. But you still feel a need to bring it up. Still, personal finance issues have been known to interfere with campaigns. And they bring up the example of Florida Senator Marco Rubio, sometimes imprudent management of his own finances were scrutinized during his 2016 campaign for president. And then Wisconsin's Governor Scott Walker's personal debt seemed to undermine his message of fiscal hawkishness. They're comparing him to Marco Rubio and Scott Walker. This article is such a reach. What would they have said about Maxwell Frost if he was running for president? Remember, Maxwell Frost was the Gen Z candidate from Florida who ran as a progressive, turned his back on the Palestinian people so that he wouldn't get challenged by AIPAC. He won, got to DC, couldn't get an apartment because the landlords told him his credit wasn't good enough. And also they didn't start getting paid till that January. So he didn't have enough money to put down the 3 months up front. And the credit was an issue. So let me ask you a question. What if Maxwell Frost would have run for president? Would they go into his finances too? Let me continue. According to West's financial disclosure filed with the FEC in August 2023, he currently makes at least $200,000 annually. That includes his professorship at the Union Theological Seminary, where his annual income falls upward of $100,000, his speaking engagements, where he makes at least another $100,000, and his retirement fund, which earns him somewhere between $5,000 and $15,000 annually. His spouse, a professor, makes at least $50,000 per year. So let me highlight something here, which I think is interesting. When they mention his retirement fund, first of all, somewhere between $5,000 and $15,000, that's a pretty significant gap. You couldn't narrow that down. You just guessing. And two, this go to show you how terrible this country is about taking care of people after they've done their work for this country. The retirement funds that some people receive in this country ain't shit. I'm just telling like it is. The retirement funds that some people receive in this country ain't shit. And that's why some people, after they retire, still have to work. $5,000 to $15,000 annually. You can't live off that. Let me continue. Kedrick Payne, an ethics lawyer with the Campaign Legal Center, said in an email to ABC News that the U.S. Office of Government Ethics advises candidates to disclose debts the size of West. The federal disclosure law requires candidates for president to report liabilities owed over $10,000. Well, hell, if you went to college, because I'm thinking about financial student loans, you know, child support is excluded. I'm going to say this again. Child support is excluded. So why are they reporting it? Something to think about. But OGE advises that overdue taxes are reportable. If West, in fact, owes taxes, voters have a right to know why this isn't disclosed, Payne wrote. I'm just thinking about all the other politicians that had tax issues and they were just like, whatever. Okay, it goes on to say West associate author Christopher Phillips described West as authentic and someone who hasn't hesitated to spend his own money to help others. Phillips, who said he has known West for 8 years, said that when he first met West over the phone, the scholar volunteered to lecture and spend time with his students at the University of Pennsylvania, where Phillips was a writing fellow. He said he could come down on his own nickel, and he spent the entire day breaking philosophical bread with my students just because he likes what I do. I told you they were going to come out with more of the smears to try to come out against Cornel West. How's the chat? Did the chat freeze, Eric? I think the chat froze. The chat is glitchy. Yeah. It's interesting. Anyway, I don't know. YouTube is glitchy. Anywho, we need to talk about why they're coming after Dr. West the way that they are. And we predicted this was going to happen. Because Dr. West is actually a big threat. More of a threat than people may realize. And I'm going to show you in just a second something that mainstream media is not showing you. But first and foremost, I think we need to remember what Dr. West's campaign is about. Now, here is Kit Cabello from Hardlands Media. And here's Chuck Modi. I want you to listen to what Chuck says about Cornel West campaign.
We have to look at Dr. West in a three-level perspective. Not just can he win it? It's a long shot, but I don't think Biden could win either, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are two other pieces. One, can he help build a movement? Can he first get 5%? Okay. Does he get 5% so the Green Party could get funding, federal funding in the future that could be part of growing a movement? That's number one. Can he get 15% to get on that debate stage and turn debates into Cornell's classroom? Do something that we've never seen. Speak truth to power in corporate spaces. I want him to say to both Trump and Biden, like he did to RFK Jr., get off the crack pipe if you think Palestinians and Israelis, it's a two-sided argument, and break that down in front of everyone. I want to see him talk about healthcare. I want to see him talk about Cop City and the Cop cities. I don't want it to be just you and I on Hard Lens Media or Dr. West and you on Hard Lens Media. I want the entire nation to be educated. And in its most tangible form, if he were to bring that to light and call people out in such a way that their hypocrisy is in front of everyone, and it could help stop Cop City, it can help support the activists who've been fighting for 2 or 3 years, well, I believe that is stopping fascism as much as anyone, because if you stop Cop City and you can halt that militarized project, that is as big a tangible outcome, because those police are going to be beating on people, whether a Republican's president, whether a Democrat's president, whether an independent's president. So it doesn't matter. So we have to look at Dr. West as a mobilizing figure, And should he lose, and he probably will, we have to take the baton afterwards. Organizers have to take the baton afterwards and say, thank you, Dr. West, for giving voice to these very important issues that we're going to keep fighting for.
And that is the point of Dr. West's campaign. What Chuck just told you there. If he gets that 5%, you get the federal funding. If he gets that 15%, then we're talking about him being on the debate stage. And could you imagine the American people hearing what Cornel West has to say on the debate stage? And then you take it from there. Win or lose, you take it from there. And we continue a movement that Bernie did not continue. But I'm going to tell you why they're scared. Let me show you why they're afraid. Check this out. Did you guys see this poll? This is the Economist/YouGov poll, August 12th through August 15th, 2023. Watch this. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger just so you can see. I forget how big they let me go and then it drops down. Sometimes it does it like this. I could just scoot it over. I'll make it bigger as I go. Trial heat, Biden versus Trump. If an election for president were going to be held now, and the Democratic nominee was Joe Biden, and the Republican nominee was Donald Trump, would you vote for Joe Biden, Donald Trump, other, not sure, I would not vote. Here's something I want to show you that, and we don't need their names for this one. I kind of just need you to see where other is. Can I highlight on here? Yay! Highlight for the win. I want to show you guys something here, okay? Now I can zoom in. This is other. So these are the people that would not vote for Donald Trump or Joe Biden. These are the others. Let's go to Black people. This is what they're afraid of. Right here, under race, Black, right? 10%. Do you see this? 10%. This is after Cornel West announced he was running. This number was not 10% before. It's been 3%. It's been 2%. It is 10%. That's just for Black voters. That's what they're afraid of. That's what mainstream media is not telling you. The Democratic Party, the DNC, they've already seen these numbers. And that's why you continue to see Morning Joe, Simone Sanders, and all the other MSNBC and CNN pundits continuing to tell people that Cornell West could give you Donald Trump and trying to scare people and throw fear into you because they already seen these numbers and they saw that 10% of African Americans would not vote for Donald Trump or Joe Biden. They would vote for other. That's 10%, boo. We're not talking one, we're not talking two, we're talking 10%. And when it comes to the Democratic Party, that is especially important. If they lose 10% of the black vote, do you know what that means? Let me pull it back up. It's not just black vote. Look, other. Right here, black people. Okay. White people, 7%. 7%. Hispanic, 5%. Other. You see, now let's go down to the bottom. Look at this part. I would not vote. Check this out. 9% of white Americans. Let me highlight this. Sorry. I need to highlight a different row. Whoops. 9% of white Americans said they would not vote. 13% of black Americans say they will not vote. 21% of Hispanic Americans say they will not vote. How many of them showing you this poll? This is recent. That's why they're trying to smear Dr. West. They try to do this with taxes. Most people I know don't give a damn about no damn taxes. We're not looking at you that kind of way. We're not giving you no side eye. Like, oh, okay, well, someone owes on child support. Okay, whatever. I told you it's hard to attack Dr. West. So they go after the income. They go after finances. But they don't want you to see this. And every poll that I've seen put up on mainstream media, they have not showed you these numbers. That 10% of African Americans will not vote for either one. And that scares the life out of them. They ain't seen these numbers before. Fear that they're losing the black vote. Oh no. And the Latino vote. You see this? Look at it. Even when we look at between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, right? Watch this. How you get, hold on, let me highlight Donald Trump. This is how horrible the Democratic Party has been. How the hell you get to this point where 17% of African Americans will vote for Donald Trump? 17%. 17, he got 11% last time. If I remember correctly, he got 11% of the vote. 17? Hispanic vote, 27%. 27% of the Hispanic vote will vote for Donald Trump. Now, Joe Biden, you're the incumbent. You know, this number continued to decline. Look at this. 54% of black people will vote for Joe Biden. That number at one point, I remember when we looked at the approvals right after he was elected, for black people, his approval was over 80%. How you get all the way down to 54? They don't want you to see this. Boom, bam, boom. Share this with your friends. Share that with your buds. Let them know. That is after Dr. West entered the race. So that tells you something. And then there's this. But it's not just happening in Massachusetts. People have to pay attention to this. This was released last year. Watch this. Fewer mass voters signing up as D or R. Automatic voter law nudges more to become unenrolled. Check this out. And we're not going to read the whole thing, just this top part, because this is important. A growing share of Massachusetts voters are signing up as independents rather than joining a party, according to new data from the Secretary of State's office. Since 2020, nearly 77% of new voters in the state chose not to enroll in a party, up from 63% for the 2-year period. These are the others. I'm one of those independents, by the way. It goes on to say, of those who did pick a party, 18% registered in the Democratic Party and 5% registered as Republicans. Mass Inc. pollster Steve Koczela says the increase in independent voters has more to do with the new automatic voter registration law that went into effect in January 2020 than dissatisfaction with two major political parties. But I disagree here, because what it does not account for are the people who changed their party affiliation. And I'm one of those people who changed to independent. He said, so basically you're registered to vote now in a whole range of different situations. When you interact with Massachusetts state government and specifically, you're registered unless you otherwise indicate as an independent, not with either party. Ding, 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 ding. This is a thing. This is the thing. In Massachusetts, voters can still participate in party primaries without enrolling in either party. At the polls, independent voters are given a choice to cast either a Republican or a Democratic ballot. The next state primary is stated for, and that was the one for September 6th. But do you see what I'm saying? This is another reason why more states don't want automatic voter registration. Because if you have automatic voter registration, and this is going the way Massachusetts does it, a lot of times we tend to be the model and people copy off of us. I'm just keeping it real. And it's going the way that we're doing it, then more people would automatically be registered as not either party. And they don't want that. Again, 10%. Share with your friends and your fam. That's what they're afraid of. Even the last poll I showed you from Simone Sanders, she said, look, the majority of people who are planning to vote for Joe Biden, these are the ones. But notice she ain't showing you those numbers, though. If you have not had a chance to do so, smash that like button. That helps me out with the algo. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And welcome. But we got to keep it real, guys. Let me go to some of the comments here. JB says, Sabs, that part about owing child support may make him more relatable to Black men who are working to pay theirs off. Exactly. Bingo. This proves Dr. West is not a rich like some of these politicians. There you go. Dave, they can't attack him on policies. There you go. I told you they'll come after your finances next. Teresa says Cornell West lost tenure because of his position on Israel. Yep. T, these kinds of tricks they play are so old. I could care less about Dr. West's taxes. He is someone who wants to make a difference for everyday people. That's what folks care about. Hardlands Media in the chat. What's up, Kit? Kit says have third parties on the debate stage. That's right. Boom, boom, boom. Thank you, Black Thoughts. In real life, Blacks en masse will continue to vote Dem. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, we're trying to get people to move in a different direction. Bebel says August 25th, Dr. West rally, Jackson, Michigan? Wait a minute. Mississippi? Jackson, Mississippi. Sabby, will you or anyone RBN be there? Is this Michigan or Mississippi? I know there's a Jackson, Mississippi. Is there a Jackson, Michigan also? If it's in Michigan, I can tell Rome. That's why I'm asking. I don't know about Mississippi. Thank you, Justin. To get Cornell on the ballot in Massachusetts, we need 50,000 people to register as Green Rainbow Party members. People need to register with the Green Party in Delaware too. Thank you, Justin. And Justin, I'll have you come on soon to explain that to people as well. And thank you, Yesim. I support Bernie, and I would be more than glad to do the same for Dr. West this time with all my heart. He needs our support to be on that debate stage. Thank you, Yesim, and what a cute pup. And I'll take Roger's comment. Computer love. All right. Thank you, Roger. Oh my God. First, Sabby has a house. Now West. What in the world? What is the world coming to? Cornell has 2 kids, a daughter, Dylan Zayden West, who is 22, and Clifton, who is 46 years old. How do you owe child support when your kids are adults way beyond 18 years old? Don't ask me, Roger. It's a good question, though. Interesting. And thank you for this tip as well. Alaska, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Georgia, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Nevada, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Virginia, Washington State, and West Virginia have all passed AVR laws. Observe those states in the coming years in terms of independent count. There are some not on here that are CBI for amendment states. Arkansas, Arizona, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Missouri, Montana, Ohio, Oklahoma, and Florida. We get them numbers up and run more indie candidates and forming political cooperatives at every level of government, break the party system. Thank you for that. And thank you for this as well. In those non-CBI for amendment states, run indie state lawmakers for office to use leverage to force the vote to get the dominant party to pass an amendment to be placed on the ballot, for allowing voters to place their own initiative amendments on the ballot to ratify what they want in their state constitution. Yes, I am the eternal optimist. Leave me alone. All righty. Okay. We're going to finish up here with Vermont. I have one more measure of Vermont to visit, and then I think we're done here. And then I have to swing back to Utah because I don't know what happened. Somehow I skipped Utah. I thought I had Utah and I skipped it. I don't know what to do with it. Anyhow, we're going to Vermont proposal number 5, and that is the right to personal reproductive autonomy amendment, where a yes vote supported amending the Vermont Constitution to add language protecting the right to personal reproductive autonomy and prohibiting government infringement unless justified by a compelling state interest. This measure was ratified by 76.77%. And it says, how do campaigns react to Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization? It says June 24th, 2022, the Supreme Court issued a ruling in the case Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, which held that the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe and Casey are overruled, and the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. Ballotpedia tracked abortion-related ballot measure campaigns responding to that ruling. It's interesting. Vermont Reproductive Liberty said, responding to the ruling by saying last week, the Supreme Court overturned almost 50 years of federal protections for abortion. Abortion is still legal in Vermont, and we're working tirelessly to pass the Reproductive Liberty Amendment. If this amendment is passed by Vermont voters in November, reproductive decisions between a person and their healthcare provider would be considered a constitutional right in our state, free of government interference. All right. So they're upholding that. That was supported by Democrat politicians in the state of Vermont, as well as the University of Vermont Medical Center and the ACLU of Vermont, to name a few. And then we have campaign finance, where you can see that over $560,000 was spent to support it, and over $20,000 was spent to oppose that measure. And I think there's one more Vermont. Why is this coming through again? That's interesting. No? Okay, that one's just really long. Yeah, that's just a really long one. Okay. So anywho, that is Vermont, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for me today. I hope you guys have a great Sunday evening. I do have to get out over the time, but thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate you hanging out with me this Sunday. I'll be back Tuesday afternoon, not Tuesday evening, Tuesday afternoon with Dr. West. So I'll be going live at 4 p.m. Eastern time to accommodate him. Don't forget, if you follow my newsletter, I'll put out a reminder in the newsletter to remind you guys I'll be live in the afternoon and not in the evening. And other than that, I am going to scoot out of here. Yeah. So you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.